In the annals of American criminal history, certain couples stand out not for their love or devotion, but for the horrific crimes they committed together, leaving society in shock. From the 1940s to the late 20th century, these pairs embarked on paths of murder, kidnapping, torture, and deception, etching their names into the dark pages of legal history. This is the story of the heinous crimes they perpetrated, illustrating the dangers of love twisted into complicity in the shadows. Alvin and Judith Neely exemplify a toxic partnership. In the early 1980s, this couple roamed Georgia and Alabama, sustaining themselves through theft and illicit activities. In 1982, their crimes took a gruesome turn. On September 11th, they shot at Ken Doley, an employee of a youth development center. The next day, they firebombed the home of another employee, Linda Adair, with a Molotov cocktail. Their most shocking crime was the abduction and murder of 13-year-old Lisa and Millicent on September 25, 1982. After luring Lisa from a mall in Rome, Georgia, they took her to a motel in Alabama, where she was tortured and abused. When attempts to poison her with drain cleaner failed, Judith shot her in the back and disposed of her body in Little River Canyon. Weeks later, they kidnapped an engaged couple, Janice Chapman and John Hancock. Hancock was shot but survived. Chapman was tortured and killed. Hancock's testimony led to their arrest in October 1982. Judith was sentenced to death, though her sentence was later commuted to life imprisonment in 1999. Cynthia Kaufman and James Marlowe, known as the Folsom Wolf, terrorized California in 1986. After marrying, they targeted women who had just withdrawn cash from ATMs. On November 7th, they abducted 20-year-old Karina Novus in Redlands, tortured, and killed her. 5 days later, they repeated the act with 19-year-old Lionel Murray in Huntington Beach. They used the victim's credit cards for personal expenses. A breakthrough came when Novus's checkbook was found in a dumpster, leading police to a lodge in Big Bear City, where the couple was arrested. Kaufman claimed she was coerced by Marlowe, but evidence showed her active participation. In 1989, both were sentenced to death for Novus's murder. Raymond Fernandez and Martha Beck, dubbed the Lonely Hearts Couple, turned personal ads into deadly traps in the 1940s. Fernandez, believing he had a supernatural charm over women, and Beck swindled and murdered wealthy widows. In 1949, they killed Delphine Downing, a Michigan widow, and her 2-year-old daughter to cover their tracks. Their final victim, 66-year-old Janet Fay, was bludgeoned to death by Beck in a jealous rage. Arrested in Michigan, they were convicted and executed in 1951 at Sing Sing Prison for Fay's murder. Samantha and John Allen horrified Arizona with their cruelty toward 10-year-old Amy Deal, a cousin they were tasked with caring for. In 2011, they subjected Amy to brutal abuse, forcing her to eat dog feces, drink hot sauce, and locking her in a small plastic box overnight in an unair-conditioned garage. Amy died of suffocation by morning. Both were sentenced to death in 2017, becoming Arizona's first married couple to receive this penalty. Faye and Ray Copeland, the oldest couple sentenced to death in the U.S., killed at least 5 transient farm workers in the 1980s to conceal fraudulent cattle schemes involving bad checks. Ray lured workers to buy cattle with fake checks, then murdered them and buried their bodies on their farm. Faye's involvement is debated, but evidence suggests she was complicit. Convicted in 1989, Ray died in prison, while Faye's sentence was commuted to life. Lisa Jo Chamberlain and Roger Gillette murdered Vernon Hewlett and Linda Heinzelman in Mississippi in 2004 during a robbery that turned violent. They tortured and suffocated Heinzelman, then hid the bodies in a freezer. Both were sentenced to life imprisonment, but Chamberlain remains Mississippi's only woman awaiting execution as of 2025. Alton Coleman and Deborah Brown embarked on a bloody crime spree in 1984, killing at least 8 people across 6 states. Targeting children and the elderly, they used deception to gain trust. Coleman received death sentences in 3 states and was executed in 2002, while Brown's sentence was commuted to life due to her submissive role and low IQ. These couples shocked the world not only with the brutality of their crimes, but also with how they exploited their bonds to enable each other's darkness. From scams and abductions to serial murder, their actions serve as a chilling warning of the perils of warped relationships.